Welcome back to Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton. And of course, this weekend is championship weekend in NFL. We've got the Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Cincinnati Bengals. But we're going to talk about that one a little later in the week. This episode, we're going to talk about the San Francisco 49ers heading east to take on the Philadelphia Eagles. And I want to bring somebody that has got a very much familiar with the San Francisco 49ers. And of course, he's out there on the West Coast. Some call it the best coast. But, hey, he's out there on the West Coast. He does a lot of different things. He is a producer for 95.7 The Game out there, co-host on the Candlestick Chronicles. Editor, managing editor for the 49ers Wire. What does he not do? Mr. Kyle Madson, what's going on, man?
What's going on, bro? It's crazy. Like, if you told me at 20 that my life would revolve around the 49ers like this, that they just been like an obsession my whole life, I would have jaw on the floor. I'm very, very lucky.
Yeah, you are. But I want to kind of introduce everyone to how we met. And it wasn't with the 49ers. It was actually with the Tennessee Titans because I was writing for Titans Wire and you actually were the managing editor there. Now, I've got to ask, you're coming from the West Coast, you're in the West Coast doing this. So kind of how rough was it to actually be doing that? a central time zone team and you're on the West Coast like 2 hours behind.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad like as you'd think. There was definitely some stuff like that would happen earlier in the morning because when I was doing that, I wasn't doing radio at the time. So if something broke, like the Mike Mularkey firing, because the Titans came out like the night before, and there was a report that said like they're not going to fire him. So I wrote that and I posted it, and I go to bed, and at like 5 a.m. my time on I think it was a Saturday, they fired him. And so I wake up to my phone buzzing because I'm getting texts and Slack messages and stuff. So that was the only time it really affected me that the team I covered was in a different time zone. But I liked doing the Titan stuff, man. That was fun.
Yeah, it was interesting, man. The one thing that it took a while for me to get used to was like I couldn't really write like 500, 600 word articles. You're like, nah, 250. 250. Man.
Yeah, just keep it tight. I still get busted for that. Not busted for it, but my boss is like, dude, do less. It's so hard. It's so freaking hard.
Now I gotta ask, how'd you get started just there? Did it just throw you with that team? Was the only team available, or you just, hey, give me that team if I've got to pick from one?
No, so I was a contributor for Niners Wire. My buddy Chris, a very good friend of mine, Chris Biederman, who I now do the podcast with, was the managing editor for Niners Wire, and he needed a contributor, and I wasn't doing anything at the time, so I was like, yeah, I'll write for you. Well, the guy running the Wire sites at the time liked the work I did, and when they launched Titans Wire, they needed an editor for it, and so he asked if I wanted to do it, and I was like, of course, because I had just moved. So real quick, long story short, I was living in Arizona, not doing media, and I wanted to do media, so I moved back home to the Bay Area, lived with my parents. There's my cat. Sorry. Lived with my parents and was just trying to get any media job I could. So when I get this call from the boss of this company that I'm working for, making $100 a month or whatever it was, he goes, "Hey, do you want to be the managing editor of Titans Wire?" I knew like Derrick Henry and Marcus Mariota and like DeMarco Murray, and that was it. Like that was the extent of my Titans knowledge. And Delaney Walker, of course, 49ers legend. And I was like, yeah, man, I got you. I can do Titans for sure. So I got on Game Pass when it was NFL Game Pass and just watched as many Titans games as I could to try and familiarize myself with the team. Did a lot of reading, got hooked up with a ton of Titans fans and just talking to those guys. I still follow the Titans quite a bit, even though I don't, write for them anymore. It's an interesting team to follow for sure.
Definitely was an interesting year for them, and not in a good way.
No,
but
it's tough.
Yeah. But now, of course, you are the managing editor for Niners Wire, and gotta ask you, you got all these different things going on, man. All things Niners, man. How do you kind of balance all
Um, working smarter, not harder.
that?
If there's something, so what we just talked about, like writing less, like just less words helps. Trying not to put too much into like a specific post, and then repackaging things I use on Niners Wire, like in the podcast. Like, hey, here's this thing I wrote at Niners Wire. Let's podcast on this topic. And it allows us to expand a little bit. Um, Same thing with radio. Like, hey, here's something I wrote. Let's have you guys, because I produce, the two hosts do the talking. So I'm like, let's have you guys talk about this thing that this topic I had. So it's a lot of repackaging, a lot of the same stuff, spinning it different ways. But man, I feel like I'm so enveloped with the 49ers that there's always something to talk about. There's always something going on. And it's really crucial to, like after this, I'm going to go have dinner with my wife and my family, and still trying to balance that social side of it too. But I mean, it's sports at the end of the day. Like, it's not like I'm doing backbreaking manual labor. So it's part of my life all the time.
Right, man. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting task to try to find the balance for sure. And yeah, we all kind of still go through trying to find that balance of life and
Yep.
writing sports. And I mean, you have the honor and privilege of doing it all the time. Of course, I got the day job and then do it after the day job. So trying to find my way there a little more. But we'll see
grinding,
what
bro.
happens.
I see you.
Hey, trying to do what I can. But of course, we do have to talk about the Niners, and we do have to talk about the Cowboys. Now, that game was probably the biggest draw of the weekend, of course, and it came down to the wire. 49ers prevail. Of course, there's a few things to talk about. And of course, there's probably Niners fans that are still a little bit, kind of in their feels, and especially in their feels about Kyle Shanahan's play calling. So some of the play calling, you're watching the game, you're like, I don't know what he's kind of trying to figure out here. He's calling the game like he's a little tight. So what did you think about his play calling on Saturday against the Cowboys?
I thought he called that game like he knew it was going to be a 19-12 type of game. Not exactly that, but like low scoring. And we see him do that all the time. And he's done that since 2017, really. And I think he does this in games where he doesn't think the offense is gonna break through. Like, we've seen him so in the wild card round against the Seahawks. There was never like a panic or a tight conservative moment. Like, they just kind of called their game and they were down a point at the half, but they I think Shanahan knew at some point they were going to get rolling. But when you looked at the way Dallas was defending them, and when Purdy did have time in the pocket, there was just nobody open. And I think Shanahan called the game like the goal was just to not turn it over. And the goal was to not put the defense in a bad spot. And eventually, like, something would happen and they would get ahead, and they were able to stay ahead. And that's what it was. So I thought it was definitely more him trying to avoid, like, because Dallas's defensive line just ate all night. And I think he was trying to avoid Brock Purdy, who's been really good at avoiding mistakes, making a mistake. Because at the end of the day, as good as he's been, he's still a rookie. He's still a 7th round pick. And I think the goal was just don't turn it over, and they were going to win. And I think that's kind of how he called the game.
Well, he definitely came close one time to turning it over. Except Trayvon Diggs just couldn't hold on to the football at that time.
Yeah.
There was another one too, but hey, I digress.
Down by the goal line with Brandon
yes.
Ayuk knocking it away. Yep.
Definitely. Now, of course, the defense of the 49ers, you got to talk about them. They definitely did some things, had a couple turnovers, and, they definitely did their thing. Everybody expected that. Nobody expected George Kittle to have the fumbling, bumbling, stumbling catch. They kind of ignited the offense. I mean, can you say that was the most pivotal play of that game?
Oh, yeah. Outside of like Trevon Diggs dropping the interception, like you just mentioned, and then the holding call, because Dallas got that sack on a 3rd down in the red zone on the Niners touchdown drive, but there was the holding call the defensive holding against a guy, I think it was Deron Bland, covering George Kittle. But those two plays don't happen without the Kittle juggling catch. Like that was the play that I think opened things up for the Niners in a way that I don't think without that play they were scoring a touchdown on that drive. So there were a couple other key moments for sure, but that was the catalyst for everything, I think. So incredible catch, and I think catch of the year if for the 49ers. Certainly the most important one. I don't know if it's the best one, but it was definitely the most important.
Definitely. Now, of course, we're not going to get caught up too much into that one, but we're going to go over to the next one, which is the Philadelphia Eagles. They just demolished the New York Football Giants. Ooh,
never close.
Boy, oh boy.
That was crazy.
Not at all.
That was wild.
Now, this is probably going to be one of the most raucous environments that Purdy has gone into. So what's going to be, do you think is going to be the challenge for him and Kyle Shanahan in terms of, you're bringing in a young quarterback into a raucous environment?
Yeah, so his first road game, he doesn't have a ton of road experience, but his first road game was a Thursday night in Seattle in a game that decided the NFC West. And Seattle's not a tough place to play. It was is a tough place to play. It was a Thursday night. He was hurt. Purdy was. He didn't even throw during the week because he had an oblique and rib injury. And he managed it okay. Like, honestly, managing the environment is the last thing I'm really worried about with Brock Purdy at this point. But to that end, this is also the biggest game he's played in. And Philly, I think, is just a little bit different. And there's that, like, aura about it, right? You just know going into the link, like, hey, something crazy is going to happen. So I'm less concerned about that than I might be if Purdy hadn't just shown kind of throughout his starts, whether it's home or road, that he just has this composure that doesn't really seem to be, he's unflappable, I guess you could say. But that's, I mean, maybe something changes with the stakes, but I don't have any evidence to think that going into Philadelphia is going to shake him in a way that going to Seattle or going to Vegas or wherever did.
Gotcha. Now, a quarterback that has definitely been equally unflappable, if not more unflappable, would be Jalen Hurts. Now, Jalen Hurts is definitely putting up MVP numbers. I mean, people want to say it's Patrick Mahomes, but hey, you can't sneeze at any numbers that Jalen Hurts has put up passing and throwing the football. So going against a quarterback, a mobile quarterback that can throw the football very, very well, what is the biggest challenge that the 49ers defense has in facing him?
Gosh, this is where like when I try and talk myself into the Niners winning, I'm having a really hard time doing it because of this. So if you go back and I know Nick Bosa didn't play. There's two things here with this. There's the mobile aspect, right? Like they've just struggled in general. I know every team struggles for the most part with mobile quarterbacks, but the Niners in especially, even in 2019, they have this great defense, but mobile quarterbacks just kind of killed them. And I don't know if it's over aggressiveness or what, but in week 6 against the Falcons, Nick Bosa didn't play, but Marcus Mariota ran all over them, and they looked like they had never defended a read option before. Like, it was alarming. And when you're going against a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, their track record with defending a play that he's really good at is not great. So if I'm the Niners in that regard, I'm just hitting Jalen Hurts every time and making him hand it off and not letting Jalen Hurts run for 95 yards. If Miles Sanders is going to go for 200, then Miles Sanders is going to go for 200. Tip your hat. But they can't let Jalen Hurts beat him on the ground. But let's say they're not going to run it. Let's say his shoulder is bad and they don't want him taking hits. Well, he's excellent throwing the ball down the field. 20-plus yard throws, he completed 40% of them. And you measure those about how you measure three-pointers, right? Like a good three-point percentage is 40%, and that's about what he completes them at. And it's 11 touchdowns, and it's 3 picks, and it's J.J. Brown, and it's Devontae Smith. They just have so many weapons down the field, and the Niners have really struggled at that this year. They've not defended the deep ball well. I think in part because of their cornerback play with Deommodore Lenoir. He's really struggled on those deep throws, the second-year corner out of Oregon. But Jimmy Ward has had to play in the slot this year, and Tayshaun Gibson, who God love him, is not as rangy as Jimmy Ward is. So the Niners in 2019 were the best team in the league at defending big plays and not allowing big plays. And this year they're not great at that. And I think it's because Jimmy Ward is down in the box and not playing that free safety spot. So I think that's something that Philly can have success with. Even if the Niners shut down that run game, I think you're going to see Jalen Hurts take a lot of deep shots, and it wouldn't surprise me if he completes a bunch of them.
Oh boy, that's something to worry about if the tough. Niners are. Okay,
they're in a bad spot. As far as the, not in a good
spot. Now you kind of alluded to it, but the San Francisco 49ers secondary, not necessarily the strongest suit of the team. In terms of a whole. I'm not saying that Mr. T back there, that's what I call him. I call him Mr. T. But I'm not saying that he's not a beast back there coming up, the blitzes and things like that, making plays. However, just as a total, not necessarily the greatest secondary. You're going against a Philadelphia wide receiver crew that has Swole Batman, AJ Brown, and you got Devontae Smith as well, and you've got a few other people that can make some things happen. Of course, the tight end Goddard as well. I mean, what do you say is going to have to help more? I know the pass rush is going to have to help, but do you think D'Amico's going to have to definitely mix up a few coverages during the game to kind of throw things off?
Yeah, for sure. If you try, and that's what D'Amico Ryan's really good at, and that's why he's one of the top head coaching candidates. He's brilliant when it comes to disguising coverages, taking away a team's top receiver, or like last week, CeeDee Lamb had 10 catches for 117 yards, and then Dalton Schultz was second on the team with 5 catches and 27 yards. Like CeeDee Lamb got his, and that was really kind of it. So they're not going to be able to do that because if you let Devontae Smith or AJ Brown eat, they're going to go for 250 and a couple touchdowns, and that's untenable. But I think that if there's any defensive coordinator who's going to figure out how to move pieces around the board to confuse Jalen Hurts here and there and take away a specific route that they really like with AJ Brown in a certain spot, or just taking Dallas Goedert out of the game with either Talanoa Hufanga or Jimmy Ward or Fred Warner, whoever it is, I think you're spot on. Whatever we see, it's not going to be like, yeah, hey, the Niners played 98% cover 2 and 1. It's not going to be that because the Eagles are going to figure that out. So I do think they're going to mix it up. I think that we maybe see them blitz a little more than we're used to seeing the Niners, just because they might want to eliminate deep shots with making Hurts get the ball out of his hands. And I just don't think that their pass rush is going to win one-on-one against an offensive line as good as Philly's. So I think we're going to see maybe more blitzing than we're used to seeing. And I think we're going to see a mix and match some coverages because I don't think they have the players, like you alluded to go man across the board. But I also think that Philly's going to cook if the Niners just sit back and zone all game. So I'm expecting a blitz heavy game and a couple of different tricks coverage wise from Ryans.
Yeah, we'll definitely see what the potential head coach in the NFL or potential head coach in waiting does with the Philadelphia offense. Now, the Philadelphia defense isn't anything to sneeze at either. I mean, they're pretty physical up front. You have 4 guys with at least 10 sacks, which is unheard of.
It's crazy.
And you have a 1A and 1B corner in Slay and Bradbury, which people forget about Bradbury, but I mean, he's pretty solid in his own right. He's a former Pro Bowler himself.
It's unbelievable that the Giants just let him walk. Just kind of like that was insane. And Philly, I was like, Philly just got James Bradbury just for nothing, just like that. And this is not a huge deal. That's wild. Yeah. James Bradbury is a really good player.
Yeah, definitely. And, of course, the biggest thing that I look at in this game is the Philadelphia Eagles versus the run. Now, I know when Jordan Davis went out, that's when they kind of got exploited a little bit. They brought in Ndamukong Suh, brought in another guy. I cannot remember his name.
Linval Joseph?
Yes, Linval Joseph. They brought both of those guys in, kind of stuffed the things up and run. But, to me, I believe that the run game is going to be a potential equalizer or potential way to kind of, control the game. Would you see that potentially that way, or do you still kind of think a few other things have to happen?
I think it's what the Niners are going to try to do. And I think they're going to do stuff like make Hassan Reddick, who had an excellent year. I think he had like 17 sacks, but he had a really good year. But
Mhm.
he's not a great tackler. Can you get him one-on-one in space with Christian McCaffrey and make him make a play there? I don't think that they're going to be able to run the ball inside. Maybe with some creativity with George Kittle and Charlie Warner and their tight ends and Kyle Juszczyk, their fullback, maybe moving some bodies around. But I don't think they're just going to be able to line up and run it down the Eagles' throats. They're going to have to get creative. I think we see them attack the edges a lot and make Philly's edge players make plays in space. But that defensive front, man, when I talked about the Eagles' offense and their ability to complete deep balls and the Niners' struggles there, you look at the Eagles' defensive line, and okay, they don't have a game wrecker on the level of Micah Parsons, but they're 5-6 guys deep on the interior with guys who are better than whatever Dallas has on the interior, and Dallas cooked the Niners' interior offensive line. So that's a huge concern, and it's one of those things that I don't know what the Niners do over the course of this week to just fix that. And if the Eagles are going to cook on the inside, I don't know if the Niners are going to have a ton of answers on the ground or in the air.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Now, I'm going to ask, of course, you are a producer at 95.7 The Game out there in the Bay Area. And I know you're probably fielding some calls about the 49ers probably this entire week, or probably have so far. So what has been one of the biggest points of contention or the biggest talks on the radio this week?
Ooh, a lot, honestly, it's kind of wild. A lot of it has had to do with, there's been some stuff about Shanahan being conservative. There's been a lot of, I would say it's kind of split 50-50, maybe closer to 60-40 on people who are like 60% people who are just super confident. Like Philly hasn't seen a team like the Niners, and the link isn't scary and this and that, and the Niners are going to go win. And then it's like 40% people who have that, the phrase du jour has been appropriate fear. Like understanding that Philadelphia is really damn good and the best team the Niners have played, I think, this year, with all due respect to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I think Philly on both sides of the ball is just a more well-balanced team than Kansas City is. So I think it's about 60-40 that. And then it's a lot of Brock Purdy talk, just the future. That's been the case with him since he beat Miami. It's like, is this guy the future? That's just always going to be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. All right. Well, of course, I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you to make a pick or anything like that at this point. But
I think the Eagles are going to win.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Just
right.
to get, I'll give you one. I think the Eagles are going to win.
Okay.
Give me like
All
24-17.
Well, there we have it. Have it. But of course, we have reached the end of the show, but we have not reached the all the way to the end. Of course, we have a game. 5 questions, 2 answers, 1 choice. Are you ready?
I'm dialed in.
All right. It's got San Francisco flavor to it, so this ought to be fun. All right. We got Ricky Waters or Roger Craig.
Oh my God. I'm picking Roger Craig because Roger Craig should be in the Hall of Fame. It's unbelievable that he's not a Hall of Famer. The first guy to go 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving in the same year, revolutionized the running back position. Marshall Faulk, Christian McCaffrey, excellent players. Probably not the players they were without Roger Craig kind of paving that way. So Ricky Waters was awesome for sure, and his performance in that 94 season was unbelievable. But I'm taking Roger Craig.
All right. Let's see. You're hanging at the 49ers game.
Okay.
Now, this is purely spectators in this question.
Okay.
Who do you want to hang with? Okay. No. The guys that I'm going to mention are purely spectators.
Got it. Okay.
Which guy would you want to be hanging with? E40 or Jerry Rice?
Oh, man. They're both. I think so. Jerry's got better seats. He sits right there in the end zone. But I think I'd rather sit with E40. I think. Although Jerry's got something in his cup the whole game, I think that would probably pass along to me. Yeah, I would. I think. Okay, so I'm gonna say E40, and this is a me thing because I would have. If I'm sitting next to Jerry Rice, I'm asking questions the whole game. Like I'm getting his thoughts on stuff. I'm at timeouts. I'm asking him about Joe Montana and Steve Young and stories. With 40, like God love him, I'm not asking him anything about football. We're gonna hang out. We're gonna have a great time. We're gonna be fans, and we're gonna yell "Bang Bang Niner Gang," and it's gonna be great. So I'm picking 40 water with all due respect to the GOAT Jerry Rice.
Now you're gonna learn some new words too. You're gonna
For sure. For sure.
Yeah. All right. Now you got to pick a 49er team. The 2011 49ers who went 13-3, or the 2012 49ers 11-4-1. Do you remember where those teams finished?
Yeah, 2011 they lost to the Giants in the NFC title game. 2012 was the Colin Kaepernick year where he came in for Alex Smith and they went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Ravens. 2012, I'm gonna go with 2012 because like the 2011 team had that epic playoff game against the Saints, and that I was there, was watching with my mom who is a Niner season ticket holder. But that 2012 team was just like they came into their own that year. Aldon Smith became a starter. Him and Justin Smith playing off each other. They had that win at home against Seattle, where Frank Gore had a long run at the end, and then fell down inbounds to seal the game. They had that win in Foxborough against Tom Snow that was incredible. I watched that with a bunch of buddies at a restaurant. And then their playoff game that year, their first playoff game at home against the Packers, is for like personal reasons is one of my favorite 49er game of all time. That's the one where Colin Kaepernick rushed for, I think, is 186 yards. So that 2012 team, and I was 22 at the time, and it was really the first time in my life that the 49ers had been good. So that was I was just kind of peak sports fandom at that point. So yeah, 2012.
Okay. All right. Now I'm going to ask you this one, and I'm pretty sure you're going to think on it, and you might make a quick answer on this one.
Okay.
You got to pick two. Are you going to go with the combination of Willis and Bowman, or are you going to go with the combination of Warner and Greenlaw?
Oh man. I was just talking to my mom about this. We were watching this weekend's game, and I was actually talking to my mom about this. It was after Fred Warner made that play against CeeDee where he lined up to blitz and then sprinted back and covered CeeDee Lamb. So the nostalgic fan part of me takes Willis and Bowman because those were just my dudes. Like I loved those guys. So and Bowman's pick 6 in the last game at Candlestick, again, like I got chills thinking about it. So those two, but I think Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner together right now are better suited to play in the modern NFL than Willis and Bowman would be. And frankly, vice versa. Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw are playing safety back in 2011. So Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw are awesome, and the Niners defense is not half of what it is without them. But Willis and Bowman are the OGs. So I'm going with the OGs here.
All right.
That's a tough one though. You
gotta respect the elders. You gotta respect the elders, right?
No doubt.
All right. Let's see. Let's think of another one I can bring up for you. Let's see. We're gonna go Chip Kelly.
No.
Or Mike Tomsula.
Jim Tomsula.
Jim Tomsula. I messed that name all the way up.
No, it was Mike. Because there was Mike Singletary. Before that, there was a Mike Nolan in there. Jim Tomsula or Chip Kelly, man.
Equally bad.
All right, so the Jim Tomsula team was better, but the Chip Kelly hire made more sense at the time. They went 2-14. They were abysmal. They were god awful. But I think that had less to do with Chip Kelly and more to do with just kind of where the organization was at the time. Trent Baalke had needed to go like 2 years before that, and I think the team knew that they weren't any good, and they had, Colin Kaepernick and Blaine Gabbert quarterback competitions, and it was not a good team. But I think Chip Kelly is a more legitimate football coach, head football coach than Jim Tomsula, who is a dynamite defensive line coach. But that's what he should have stayed. The fact he was a head coach was a joke.
Yeah, it was funny to me. I was trying to tout it, and I was like, I can't do it.
It never made sense. It never made sense. And then what 5-11 or 4-12 or whatever. Like it wasn't a disaster, but he had no idea.
Yeah, the fact that I butchered his name ought to tell you enough about what I thought of him.
No doubt.
Now, I have to ask, man. Of course, we've ended the 5 questions, 2 answers, 1 choice. That's wrapping everything up. But I do have to ask. Trent Baalke is now with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Mm-hmm.
How long do you give it before he wears out his welcome there?
Man, I think he did. It was 4 years with the Niners.
Yes.
The difference is though, is that the Jags have Trevor Lawrence, and I think he's the caliber of quarterback that can kind of push a lot of that stuff under the rug. And the fact that they went out this year, and I thought the Calvin Ridley trade was pretty brilliant. And then the Christian Kirk deal I thought was a lot, but he played really well for them. Defensively, I think Trent Baalke can identify talent, but can he get out of his own way in trying to, like, sometimes the frustrating thing with Trent Baalke, and the other thing he did was he built them from the interior out. So he knew the importance of establishing an offensive line and establishing a defensive line and kind of building from there. The problem was he started overthinking, and he started drafting all these guys with torn ACLs and trying to redshirt them and just kind of just overlooking easy picks. So if he learned from that, and if he can work with Doug Peterson, then I think he's a decent talent evaluator. They built a really, really good team, but it was the friction with Jim Harbaugh. It was the weird torn ACL guys that just somehow never ever worked out, yet he still kept doing it. There were some big swings and misses on guys early in the draft, and I don't know if Jim Harbaugh's the easiest guy to work with. I think Doug Peterson might be a little bit more amenable to Trent Baalke's interests. So I would, if you're telling me he's going to wear out his welcome for sure, I'd say it happens in the next few years, but I'm crossing my fingers for him that he learned something from his 49ers tenure.
Well, I got some stories for you, but we can't say them on there. but I definitely want to thank you for coming on. Thank you for giving us some knowledge about this NFC Championship game from the 49ers perspective. Greatly appreciated. And if you can, tell everyone what you have going on, where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Kyle A. Madson. You can follow me on Instagram if you're into that at MadSports8, but that's like a personal. I don't do like Niner stuff there. NinersWire.com is where I write. 95.7 The Game in San Francisco if you're in the Bay Area, and Candlestick Chronicles. Download it wherever you get your podcasts.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That is Kyle Madson. I am Mike Patton. This has been Touring the AFC South. Thank you for tuning in, and we're out.